Two-time Stanley Cup champion, Daniel Carcillo, TBI advocate, head trauma advocate, concussion advocate. He's doing an amazing thing. Let's give a big round of applause for this guy right
here. All right. First of all, thank you for that, Doug and Karen. Very informative, a little scary. So hopefully I can, I'm going to take you on a journey of my story, and it's going to start with some trauma, but it's going to end with hope, and we'll leave you guys with that. And thank you to Andy for sharing your story and your expertise. And I think we all need to give Jacob another round of applause for putting this together. So, 2 horizontal tears in my ankles, no PCL in my right knee. I've done my MCL 5 times in my right knee. Had an ACL reconstructive surgery on my left knee. Done my MCL 6 times, arthritis in both knees. Had orthoscopic hip surgery on my left hip. I've had my abdomen stapled back to my pelvis. I have arthritis in both hips. Here's Dr. Grubbs. How are you, buddy? I have no labrum in my left shoulder. I've got arthritis and 3 discs in my neck. And I was pretty much prepared for all of that. That's not why I made a plan to end my life. I made a plan to end my life because of the mental health complications derived from 7 diagnosed concussions in the NHL, as well as we've just heard, all of the repetitive head trauma and subconcussive hits that I didn't realize was doing so much damage. I'm originally from King City, Ontario, Canada, where hockey's religion. And I started playing at 4, and I was born in '85, and back then we learned the game a little bit differently. You take the opponent's will to play away, so I would lean on you and through physical force make you hesitate to touch that puck. Once you hesitated, then our team saw that, and we would step all over you. And that's the way that we learn the game. It's being taught a little bit differently now, which is a really good thing. They've moved the age of hitting up to 12, because the only thing, it's still a bit of a joke, but the only thing that protects you from concussion is being able to see it and brace. Those are the only 2 things. So it depends on the strength of your neck muscles. So it is a good thing that they've moved the age up to let that develop in children. But my journey started at 4. I turned to the game as an emotional release, and used it accordingly. My parents taught me to apply myself 100% to everything that I did, and that was no different in school or in hockey. And at 15, I found myself in a position that I was good enough to be getting looked at by scouts. And in Canada, that's a big deal. And so I made a decision there to apply myself fully, and I ended up getting drafted to the Ontario Hockey League. And at 16, I moved away from home, and I started my OHL career 3 hours away from family and friends, and made that sacrifice to pursue my dream. At 17, we're going to talk a lot about physical trauma, but I know from the research that I've done and from what I've been through that emotional trauma does just as much damage. And as a minor, my draft year, we went through, 12 of us as rookies went through physical, sexual, verbal abuse at the hands of teammates and coaches. And what should have been the happiest year of my life, because I did end up getting drafted 73rd overall, was the worst year of my life. And at the end of the story, I'll tie it back, but that is really what catapulted me into this persona in the NHL and in professional hockey as Carbon. And really just, trying to use that game to deal with the emotional trauma, even though I didn't quite realize how badly it was affecting me. And so I broke into the NHL at 20 years old, and I'm not gonna lie, I was extremely selfish, and if I could, I would step on your throat with my skate to get over you. And that's the way it is with sports, especially hockey. You have to embody being this person, being this type of person that it's me and it's not you. And, you know, throughout my whole career, it didn't sit well with me. That's not who I was, and that's not who I am. But I did embody it, for sure. And from 20 to 25, just not a good teammate, not a good person. I went through addictions. I was institutionalized in jail at 21 years old after signing the biggest contract of my career because I made a mistake, had too many drinks, and got in my truck, and ended up doing 90 days in jail for a DUI, which ended up introducing me to a behavioral and substance abuse program, which I was in for the rest of my career. And I just, I was struggling, you know, and again, just not a very good person. And at 25, ended up having 2 surgeries back to back in 14 days, the hip surgery and stapling my abdomen back to my pelvis. And then I was prescribed opiates, pure hydrocodone for the first time. And that took away everything. That took away all the pain for the first time, and it numbed me to the point that I fell in love. And I finally felt comfortable and normal. And so at 25, that opiate addiction over 6 months almost killed me. And luckily, I got that DUI when I was 20, and I was in that program. So I asked for help, and I told the doctors what I'd been doing. And I ended up having to make a decision. You know, we talk about 2 paths, and thank gosh that I chose the right one to get healthy, to get better, to look at myself in the mirror. And I went to rehab, and I did 60 days in Malibu, and I came back to the NHL, a different player, and it somewhat affected, you know, teams' abilities to actually want me to be on their team, because part of my job is to be unpredictable and make sure the star players were protected. But from 25 to 30, I went to the Stanley Cup Finals 4 times with 3 different teams, and nobody's ever done that. You know, I hate to quote Drake every time I do these speeches, but if you live the right way, your luck is a sure thing. You know, and that's a testament to the hard work that I put in, because it's not easy to look in the mirror, and it's not easy to ask yourself what's wrong, and then do something about it. And you know, my last year in the NHL it was 2014-15, and at 25, when I first got to Chicago and I was first sober, I met Steve Monador, who we became very, very close friends. And my last year, November 24th, my son was born, and I already started kind of thinking about stepping away from the game because I didn't want to be an absent father on the road for 180 days of the year. And then Steve passed away in February, and that was really, really hard on me. And I remember getting the phone calls right before a game, and I was just spiritually, mentally, physically dead inside, and kind of made a decision that I was done playing. So I walked in the coach's office and just asked them to never play me again. They ended up playing me again in March. We were already in the playoffs, so I was kind of one of those guys who's a little bit expendable. And so they played me, and I was just in so much pain that I picked a fight for no good reason, and ended up getting my 7th diagnosed concussion. And the symptoms for that, from that injury, were extremely frightening, and it took me, you know, the better part of a year to try to get to regain some of my brain health. And after my career, I ended up retiring in September 2015, and that kind of started my path onto researching and advocacy work about what had happened to my friend and what was happening to me. And, you know, for example, Steve had 10 keys for the same deadbolt when I went to his house. I ended up going back to Chicago after his wake, and I walked into the Porsche dealership, and the manager's like, "Yeah, man, you know, sorry for your loss. I talk to Steve every day." I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, "Oh, why are you talking to Steve every day? And he would call the Porsche dealership on speed dial because once or twice a day you'd have to ask them where he left his car if you walked into a restaurant. So it's serious, and I would hate to see people in different types of communities get to the point that Steve is in, where you can't empty that cup anymore. It's too full. And I do this work, and I'm trying to get as healthy as I can, not only to honor his name and his legacy coming up in the trials against the NHL, but to also be the healthiest person that I can be for me, so that I can be present for my children, so that I can be present for my wife, and I can basically try to reach back and mend the relationships with my parents and mend the relationships with my brothers and some of my friends too, that I've distanced myself with when I was sick. And now I'll talk about recovery and what has helped me. And one of those people that are here that you're going to hear from after me is a Carrick Institute trained functional neurologist who in 2013 I was able to go to because Steve pushed me to go to one. And because when he came back from Dr. Carrick, I saw the change in him. His speech wasn't slurred anymore. His eyes were bright. The anxiety and depression was gone. Insomnia wasn't there. So I'm like, all right, I'll go. And so these people have helped. They've helped me understand the brain. They've helped me understand how to diagnose. They've helped me to connect people to this type of treatment because a lot of communities do not understand what's going on and they need this type of treatment. And I truly believe that if you want to talk about neurodegenerative disease and you want to talk about these scary things, well, then you have to give people a way out. You have to give people hope. And that's one way out. And the other ways out that have helped me the most is introducing CBD, organically grown, melded with mushrooms, lion's mane, reishi, cordyceps, chaga, agarikon, and turkey tail. These 6 mushrooms have been shown to increase BDNF, and they're totally legal. You can go to Whole Foods and buy them. And BDNF is brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which also strengthens your myelin sheath, which gets weakened with traumatic brain injury. So these special mushrooms have been used in Asia for the last 20,000 years to treat neurodegenerative disease, like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia, and CTE. CTE is just one neurological degenerative disease. You're at risk for all of those that I just listed. 3 or more traumatic brain injuries and you're 80% more susceptible to those diseases. That's the stat. And there are things that you can actively do right now to protect your brain. CBD, the US government holds patents on CBD, specifically as a neuroprotectant, antioxidant, and anti-inflammatory. The US government took that patent out in 2003. CBD is the only patented neuroprotectant in the world. So I implore you, if you're still working, take it. If your union doesn't allow you to take it, take isolate. 0% THC. I implore you guys to look at Paul Stamets and Host Defense. USDA grown, organically grown mushrooms. The mushrooms that I listed. You have to almost give yourself a line of defense because we can stand up here and we can scare you, but the reality is a lot of you still need to work. So what can we do right now to help better protect you? And then we can take it a step further. I'm on the National Board of Decriminalized Nature. I brought a resolution forth to the city of Chicago, and it was adopted at a 50-0 vote. And right now I'm planning a panel to go forth in front of the city council with myself, veterans, police officers, first responders, and people that things like psilocybin mushrooms or magic mushrooms, ayahuasca, iboga for addiction, and cacti have helped. And we truly believe, I'm on the national board of that committee, that the neurogenesis properties and the way that your right and left brain hemisphere communicate at a rate that's never been seen before when you go through a psilocybin ceremony can help wake up your brain and stimulate the areas that have been shut down due to trauma. And you're going to hear more about that from Shad. So there's a couple ways that you can do this. And that's what's giving me my life back. That's what's giving me my quality of life back and my purpose. And so I'd be remiss if I didn't say this to you guys. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention it's a Schedule I drug. So is cannabis. That means there's no medical value. All right, so there is medical value, and I just implore you guys to research this stuff, because I truly believe you don't fix a chemical imbalance by introducing another chemical into it. So we have to look at these natural remedies, all right? And that is where, over the last 8 months, so 8 months ago, I was still sleeping until 3 p.m. I was still having impulse control issues with my wife and kids. I wanted nothing to do with them. $3 worth of pills has saved my life. So I implore you guys to look at it. I'm about to initiate clinical trials in another country to get my specific protocol to the TBI community. I'm not a doctor, but I do a lot of research, and I read all the papers that they write, and I'm able to put it into lay's terms for people. And what I've stumbled upon is a protocol that I truly believe can save a lot of communities, not just the TBI community, people that suffer from mental illness and mental health complications as well. Because my biggest thing was anxiety and depression that grew into suicidal ideation. Scared me enough after I made a plan to get this type of treatment. So it's out there. And I work with a lot of veteran organizations, 22 a day kill themselves. These communities that need this type of treatment and need this type of hope. So there is hope out there. And then Karen, like she mentioned, a lot of researchers are doing some really great things, looking at tau, which is the entanglements that cause all of these neurodegenerative diseases. All right? So with that, I'll just say again like how grateful I am and how amazingly attentive you guys have been, and I appreciate everybody in this room and Jacob's support. And let's bring up a functional neurologist.